Silence is power. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not a sign that you don't care. It's a sign that you value yourself enough to step back and reclaim control over your emotions. But here's what most people don't realize. When you go silent, the person on the other side doesn't just move on like nothing happened. No, they feel it. They notice it. And if they had any level of control over you before, your silence threatens that control. That's why they're waiting, watching, hoping you'll break first. Because the moment you do, when you give in, when you text first, when you reach out just to check in, you've handed them the power they thought they lost. Suddenly, they know you're still emotionally tied to them. Suddenly, they don't have to wonder anymore. And for some people, that's all they wanted, to confirm that you haven't really moved on. You see, when someone expects you to break no contact, they're not necessarily hoping for a heartfelt reunion. A lot of times, they're just hoping for validation. They want to know that you still care, that you still think about them, that you still haven't fully let go. But let me tell you something. That's not love. That's ego. That's a power game, and you're not playing anymore. Because here's what happens when you hold your silence. They start feeling the weight of your absence. In the beginning, they might act like they don't care. They might even tell themselves that you're just being stubborn. But as time goes on, doubt starts creeping in. They start wondering if maybe, just maybe, you've actually moved on. That maybe this time, you're serious. And that's when the tables turn. You see, when you refuse to break, when you refuse to give them the satisfaction of knowing you're still emotionally attached, they start questioning themselves. They start replaying old conversations, reanalyzing moments, trying to figure out why you haven't reached out yet. And for the first time, they are the ones sitting with uncertainty, not you. But that only happens when you stand firm. That only happens when you recognize that silence is not a loss, it's a strategy. A strategy that forces them to confront the reality of your absence instead of assuming you'll always be there waiting. So if you're feeling tempted, if you're thinking maybe I should just send one message, stop, breathe. Remember this, every time you choose silence, you're choosing yourself. You're choosing dignity over desperation, power over pleading, and that is a decision you will never regret. When someone pulls away from you, especially after a deep connection, your first instinct might be to chase, to seek clarity, to demand answers. But here's what you need to understand. Distance reveals the truth. When you stop reaching out, when you stop filling the silence with your words, you give them the space to show their real intentions. A person who truly values you won't need you to remind them of your worth. They won't need you to break the silence just to pull them back in. Because when someone cares, they don't let silence linger. They don't wait for you to make the first move. They don't sit back and hope you'll crumble under the weight of the unknown. Instead, they step up. They close the gap. They show you through action, not just words, that you matter. But when someone is simply looking to control the situation, to keep you as an option, they'll do the opposite. They'll stay quiet. They'll wait. Not because they don't notice the silence, but because they're testing you. They want to see if you'll be the one to break first. If you'll be the one to come running back, proving to them that they still have a hold on you. And that's the real game, power. It's not about love. It's not about missing you. It's about control. They want to know that they can disappear and still have access to you whenever they feel like it. That they can neglect you, ignore you, disappear for days. And the moment they feel like reconnecting, you'll be right there, waiting with open arms. So ask yourself, what message do you send when you break the silence first? You tell them that you're still emotionally attached, that you still crave their validation, that you are willing to excuse their absence just to hear from them again. And that's exactly why they do it, because they know you'll cave. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you hold your ground and refuse to chase? That's when the dynamic shifts. That's when they start to question whether they had as much power over you as they thought. That's when they start feeling uneasy, realizing that maybe this time they miscalculated. Because people only test the ones they think will fail. They only pull away from the ones they assume will chase. And when you refuse to play the game, when you refuse to feed their ego, they are left with nothing but their own silence, their own thoughts, and the realization that maybe, just maybe, they lost something real. And that is a truth far more powerful than any text you could ever send. When someone is waiting for you to break no contact, they're not just waiting for a message, they're waiting for confirmation. Confirmation that they still have control, that they still live in your mind, that they can walk away and still have access to you whenever they choose. And the moment you break, the moment you reach out, you give them exactly what they were hoping for, proof that they still have a hold on you. But here's the deeper truth. People who genuinely care about you, people who respect you, don't put you in a position where you have to wonder. They don't play games. They don't sit back and hope you'll chase after them. Because love, real love, isn't about who cracks first. It's not a power struggle. It's not a test. When someone truly values you, they don't leave you questioning your worth. They don't leave you wondering if they miss you. They don't need silence to prove a point. They step forward, they show up, they communicate. And if they don't, if they let the days pass without checking in, that alone is your answer. Because think about it, if someone really wanted to talk to you, they would. If someone really cared, you wouldn't have to analyze their every move, trying to decipher what they're thinking. Silence is communication. Distance is an answer. The problem is, we don't always want to accept what it's saying. We convince ourselves that maybe they're just scared, maybe they're confused, maybe they're waiting for us to make the first move because they don't know what to say, but the truth is, someone who truly wants to be in your life will find a way. They won't let pride, ego, or fear get in the way. They will reach out. They will close the gap. Because when you care about someone, you don't risk losing them just to win a game of emotional chess. So when you feel that urge to break no contact, ask yourself, why? Are you reaching out because you genuinely believe there's something worth saving? Or are you reaching out because you're afraid of what their silence might mean? Because if it's the latter, you already have your answer. And here's the most important part. When you don't break, when you hold your ground, you shift the dynamic. You force them to confront their own actions, their own choices. You make them realize that if they want access to you, it won't come easy. It won't be on their terms. They will have to step up. They will have to prove their worth. And that is the moment they start to question everything. Silence is one of the most powerful tools you have. It's uncomfortable, it's unsettling, and it forces people to confront their own thoughts. When you don't break no contact, when you don't give in to that impulse to reach out, you're creating a space where the other person has to sit with the reality of their own choices. They have to feel the weight of the silence. And that's when the real test begins. Because when someone expects you to break, when they're waiting for you to crack, what they're really hoping for is reassurance. They want to know that no matter what, you'll always be there. That no matter how they treated you, no matter what they did, they still have that open door to walk back through. And the longer that door stays shut, the more they start to wonder. At first, they might convince themselves it's a game. They'll wait a few days, maybe even a few weeks, fully believing you'll fold first. But when the days pass, when the messages don't come, when they realize you're not chasing, that's when doubt starts creeping in. That's when they start to second guess everything. Because here's what most people don't understand. When you stay silent, you shift the power dynamic completely. You're no longer reacting. You're no longer giving them control. You're letting them sit with their own decisions. And that is something most people can't handle. They're used to the cycle, distance, followed by you reaching out, followed by them getting what they want. But when that cycle is broken, that's when real emotions come to the surface. This is where people start questioning themselves. They start thinking, wait, was I wrong? Did I misjudge them? Maybe they're stronger than I thought. Maybe they don't need me as much as I assumed. And the moment someone starts questioning their own importance in your life, the moment they feel like they're losing that grip, that's when they start feeling the urge to reach out. Because silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of self-respect. It's you standing firm in your value. It's you saying, if you want to talk, if you want to be in my life, it's on you now. I'm done chasing. I'm done proving my worth. And when you see the truth, not in their silence, but in how they respond to yours. People often think that silence means nothing is happening. That if you're not reaching out, if you're not talking, If you're not making a move, then nothing is changing. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Silence is never empty. It's full of pressure, it's full of weight, and the longer it lasts, the heavier it gets. When you go no contact and truly stick to it, you're creating a void that the other person has to deal with. And here's the truth. Most people can't handle that kind of silence for long. Because silence forces reflection. It forces people to sit with their own thoughts, to wrestle with their own feelings, to acknowledge things they might have been avoiding. And when someone is used to you always being there, always being the one to fix things, always being the one to bridge the gap, that silence starts to feel unbearable. At first, they may tell themselves it's a phase. They'll rationalize it. Oh, they're just trying to prove a point. They'll reach out eventually. But as time goes on and the silence remains, it stops being a waiting game and starts being a reality check. That's when the mind starts spinning. What if they've moved on? What if they don't need me anymore? What if I miscalculated? And this is where most people break, because deep down, most people don't want to feel like they're being forgotten. They don't want to believe they've lost their grip, that their absence doesn't affect you the way they thought it would. That's when the insecurity kicks in. That's when the fear creeps in. See, the real battle isn't about words. It's not about who says what first. It's about who can hold their position, who can sit in the silence the longest, who can resist the urge to fold. And when you hold your ground, when you don't let the silence break you, that's when you gain the upper hand. That's when the dynamic shifts completely. Because silence makes people question everything. It makes them rethink the way they treated you. It makes them analyze every interaction. And most importantly, it makes them realize that maybe, just maybe, they don't have as much control over you as they thought. And that realization, that's when the tables turn. When you're silent, when you refuse to break no contact, you're sending a message far louder than any words ever could. You're not just saying, I need space or I need time. You're saying, I respect myself enough to not chase someone who's not giving me the respect I deserve. And that, my friends, is a message that hits deeper than anything you could ever say. But here's the thing, this silence isn't about playing games. It's not about trying to manipulate or force someone's hand. It's about your own growth and your own boundaries. It's about showing up for yourself in ways that you might have neglected in the past. Because when you constantly give, when you're always the one reaching out, always trying to repair, always trying to make things right, you start to lose sight of your own worth. You forget that your time, your energy, and your heart are valuable. And the moment you take a step back, the moment you stop chasing, you're reminding yourself that you are worth more than being anyone's second thought. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of wanting to prove yourself to someone. You think, if I just send one more text, one more call, maybe they'll see how much I care. Maybe they'll realize they're wrong. But the truth is, if someone can't see your value without you having to convince them, they're not seeing you at all. They're seeing what they want to see. And that's not the same thing. When you stop trying to force them to see you, that's when they have no choice but to sit with their own feelings, their own regret, and their own insecurities. Now, I know how difficult this is. We've all been there, waiting for that message, checking your phone for a sign that they still care, hoping for that little breadcrumb to feel like maybe things aren't as bad as they seem. But here's the hard truth. That breadcrumb is not going to feed you. It's not going to satisfy your hunger for genuine connection, for respect, for someone who truly values you. You're settling for less when you chase after someone who hasn't even shown they're willing to give you what you deserve. And the silence, that's where you start to find your strength. That's where you start to find your clarity. Because when you stop seeking validation from someone who isn't showing up for you, when you stop running after someone who's leaving you hanging, you start realizing that your worth doesn't depend on their actions. It doesn't depend on their attention or approval. It's something that comes from within you, and it doesn't waver based on whether or not they decide to text. And when you hold your ground, when you stay strong in your silence, something starts to shift in them. They begin to feel the absence. They start to realize that what they thought they could take for granted is no longer available to them. That's when they start thinking about their actions. That's when they start wondering if they missed out on something real. They start to question themselves because they're now facing the consequences of their choices. And that's powerful. This silence isn't just about making them feel your absence. It's about you taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. It's about you reclaiming your space, your peace, and your power. It's about you deciding that you're not going to settle for anything less than the respect and love you deserve. And when you stand firm in that, when you stay strong in your boundaries, you're not just showing them what you won't tolerate, you're showing yourself what you won't settle for anymore. And that, my friends, is where the real transformation begins. When you stop breaking no contact, when you make that powerful choice to remain silent and not react, you're taking the reins of your life. This is where the power lies, not in the constant chatter, the back and forth, or even in the temptation to seek closure through another message. It's in the silence, in that moment of stillness, that you begin to reclaim your energy and power. You stop letting your emotions be at the mercy of someone else's decisions. Instead, you start to focus inward, realizing that you hold the key to your own peace and healing. It's easy to believe that if you're not reaching out, if you're not doing something to try and fix the situation, you're losing. You might feel like you're giving up or letting go of something you care deeply about, but what you're really doing is strengthening yourself. You're learning the art of self-respect. You're learning that your peace doesn't depend on the actions of others. It's rooted in your ability to stand firm in who you are, in your values, and in your worth. There's power in knowing that you don't need to chase after someone to validate your existence. This isn't about whether or not they miss you. It's about whether or not you miss the version of yourself that was constantly seeking validation from someone who wasn't showing up. And once you see that, once you recognize the energy you were expending to try and get them to care, you begin to realize how much of yourself you were losing in the process. Now, this doesn't mean you have to forget about the relationship or pretend like it never mattered. It means you're choosing to honor yourself above all else. You're choosing to break free from the cycle of overthinking, of hoping, of waiting for someone else to decide if you're worthy. You're deciding that you are worthy regardless of what they choose to do. And in that decision, you begin to heal, to grow, and to move forward. People might try to convince you that silence means weakness, that it's a sign of you giving up. But silence isn't about giving up. It's about choosing to give yourself the space you need to come back to your own truth. When you refuse to break no contact, when you stop chasing after someone who isn't meeting you halfway, you're telling the universe that you are open to more. You're telling yourself that you're not here to chase love or attention or approval from someone who can't even see your value. And when you step into that energy, you begin to attract the things and people who truly align with your worth. So no matter how tempting it might be to break the silence, to send that message, to reach out again and again, remember that what you're really doing is breaking free from the cycle of dependency. You're choosing to stop giving away pieces of yourself to someone who isn't honoring you. And in that decision, you find your true power, your strength, and your worth. Because when you stop waiting for someone to choose you, you begin choosing yourself. And that's the only choice that truly matters. When we stop breaking no contact, when we choose to remain firm in our silence, we are not just preserving our dignity, we are also giving ourselves the gift of clarity. This decision, although difficult in the beginning, opens up a space where we can reflect on what we truly want in life and in relationships. It's easy to be clouded by the constant noise of someone else's behavior, by the expectation of a text, a call, or a gesture that shows they care. But when you make the choice to stop engaging in that cycle, you take control of your emotions and ultimately your future. It's vital to recognize that silence is not the absence of communication, but rather it's the presence of self-respect. You're no longer participating in an unhealthy exchange that drains you. The mind can often play tricks on us, making us believe that we are somehow losing out, that we are not worthy of attention because we're not chasing after someone else. But in reality, by choosing silence, you are showing the universe that you are in control, that you are the master of your own actions, and that you are no longer reliant on someone else's choices to feel complete. When you stop trying to force communication, you allow yourself the space to reconnect with your own inner truth. You start listening to the voice inside you that knows your worth, that understands your potential. You can no longer hear that voice when you're constantly trying to get someone else's attention or approval. It's like trying to hear your thoughts over the noise of a busy street. But in silence, that voice becomes clear, and you can finally begin to hear what your heart truly needs. During this time of silence, you may begin to realize something profound. You were never waiting for them to text you in the first place. What you were really waiting for was for them to validate your worth, to make you feel seen, important, and valued. But that external validation will never fill the emptiness inside. It's something only you can do for yourself. So when you stop breaking no contact, when you allow the space between you and them to grow, you also give yourself the opportunity to heal and strengthen your own sense of self-worth. As you continue to resist the urge to break the silence, you begin to understand that their lack of communication doesn't define your value. You start to realize that you're worthy of love, respect, and attention simply because you are you, not because you're chasing after it. When you stop breaking no contact, you start to heal the parts of yourself that were once seeking external affirmation. You become more attuned to your own needs, your own desires, and your own growth. What happens next is truly beautiful. You stop feeling the need to fight for someone's attention or affection. You stop doubting yourself, wondering if you're enough. You stop questioning why they haven't reached out. You begin to appreciate yourself, to trust your instincts, and to recognize that the right people will come into your life without you having to beg for it. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You know it. And that's enough. You see, by choosing silence, by choosing not to break no contact, you aren't giving up. You're letting go of the attachment to the outcome. You're choosing peace over chaos, certainty over uncertainty, and most importantly, you're choosing yourself over the empty promises or false hope that someone might change. Because in the end, the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. And when you stop giving away your power, when you stop waiting for someone to decide your worth, you start to step into your own power, into your own confidence, and into the life you deserve. So, stay strong, hold that silence, trust that in doing so, you're not losing anything, you're gaining everything. When you are in no contact, it's easy to feel like you're playing a waiting game, wondering if they're thinking about you, wondering if they miss you or wish you'd break the silence. But let's make something clear. The silence isn't just about them, it's about you. It's about what you're learning, how you're growing, and what you're realizing during this time apart. You see, when you stop contacting them, it forces both parties to confront the truth. For you, it's about realizing how much you've been allowing someone else's actions or lack of actions to dictate how you feel about yourself. And for them, it's about facing the fact that they can't control you. You're no longer dependent on their attention or approval to feel validated. You're starting to see the strength in your own independence. Here's the truth. The longer you remain in no contact, the clearer things become. You start to notice patterns. You start to realize that maybe their behavior wasn't as healthy as you thought. You stop placing your value in their response or their absence. You begin to see that you don't need anyone else's communication to feel whole. The healing process takes time, but every day you hold firm, you get stronger. Breaking no contact may feel like you're making progress, like you're reconnecting, but in reality, it only sets you back. You're giving away your peace, your energy, and your self-respect when you break the silence. So, even if they seem to be waiting for you to break, remember, you don't need to. You have control over your own actions. In this space of no contact, you're learning something profound, how to live for yourself. This time apart isn't just about distancing from them, it's about learning to reconnect with yourself, your goals, your passions, and your needs. You're reclaiming your power. And that, my friend, is the true breakthrough. So, instead of breaking no contact, use this time to refocus on your life, your growth, and your happiness. This is your moment to truly see the bigger picture and recognize that you don't need anyone else to define your value. When you choose silence, you're choosing your own peace and your own happiness, and that's all that matters. Stay in your power. Stay in your peace, because in the end, the person who values you most will respect your space and will come to appreciate the strength you've shown. When you're in no contact, it can feel like you're stuck in a limbo, unsure of where things stand, wondering if they're waiting for you to reach out or if they're already moving on. But the truth is, no contact isn't about them, it's about you. It's about the boundaries you've set, the decision to regain control over your emotions and your life. And in this space, you discover something incredibly powerful about yourself. How much you can grow and heal when you choose to stop allowing someone else's actions to dictate your emotional state. One of the most powerful realizations you'll come to during this period is that you are not dependent on anyone else for your happiness. It doesn't matter if they reach out or not. Your worth isn't tied to their response. You begin to see that your happiness doesn't need to be validated by anyone. It comes from within you. You are the one who gets to decide how you feel, how you move forward, and what boundaries you need to maintain to protect your peace. As time passes and you hold firm in your decision to maintain no contact, you begin to understand that this isn't about playing games or trying to make them feel something. It's about recognizing your own strength and reclaiming your power. It's about setting the standard for how you expect to be treated in relationships and taking the necessary steps to protect your heart from unnecessary hurt. It's about recognizing that love doesn't come from begging or chasing. It comes from mutual respect, understanding, and effort. In the absence of contact, the clarity that emerges is profound. You start to see the bigger picture. The relationship wasn't just about their behavior or their actions. It was about how you allowed yourself to be treated, how much you gave, and how little you got in return. And you realize that the more you choose to hold back and not break no contact, the more you empower yourself to create the kind of relationship you truly deserve. Breaking no contact in the end would only undermine the work you've done. It would send a message to yourself and to them that you're willing to sacrifice your boundaries and your worth for a moment of attention. But you've already learned that attention is fleeting. It's the respect, consistency, and effort that really matter. So, don't break the silence. Stand firm in the choice you've made and recognize the immense value you're placing on your own growth and self-respect. It's not about revenge or proving a point to anyone else. It's about creating a future where you are free from the constraints of unhealthy dynamics. It's about you stepping into your power and realizing that the only approval you need is your own. The longer you maintain this no contact period, the stronger you become in your ability to create a life that is peaceful, fulfilling, and based on healthy relationships. Ultimately, this time apart will teach you more than you could have imagined. It will teach you that you are enough on your own, that your worth is intrinsic and not based on anyone else's approval. You will emerge from this stronger, more confident, and more in tune with the kind of relationship you truly deserve. So, don't break the silence. Stay strong. You've got this.